The first principle of the Utah Compact, of which the Salt Lake Chamber is one of the original signatories, states that immigration is a federal issue. The Chamber, along with other business, community, and religious leaders, supports immigration reform at a national level. Jeremy Robbins is a policy advisor for New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg and helps manage the Partnership for a New American Economy, a coalition of business leaders and mayors joined to make the economic case for smarter economic reforms. Jeremy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Marty.
Fresh off the plane, and we're happy to have you in our city. You've got some big hitters who are in support of this whole project. Throw out some names, obviously Mayor Bloomberg. Tell me who else is supporting this and how you got them on board.
It's a broad coalition. It started with Mayor Bloomberg in New York, with Rupert Murdoch, with CEOs from Disney, from Hewlett-Packard, from Boeing, from Marriott, with mayors from Los Angeles, Phoenix, Philadelphia, San Antonio, all around the country. And we got them on board because it's an issue that cuts across different areas. It cuts across business, it cuts across cities, because people care about this as an economic issue. And now we have 250 members. We're in 38 states. We have mayors of 30 million Americans. We have business leaders that employ 4 million people, generate $1 trillion of revenue, and we're growing by the day. So we're just 10 months old, and we expect to be double this size next year.
When you've got all these important people, these big hitters that are signing on in support, tell me exactly what it is they're in support of. Immigration, it can be such a broad spectrum of opinions. We've found that to be true here in Utah. Yeah. What exactly is it that you're pushing for?
What they realize and what they're in support of is that immigration is an economic issue. That we talk about it, immigration is a national security issue. It's a fairness issue, it's a law and order issue. We respect all those things, and it is, all of those things. But it's an economic issue too, and that if we had smarter immigration policies, we'd have more Americans back at work. And in a recession, when we still have 9% unemployment, this is more important than ever. And we find that if you bring a pragmatic solution, something that talks about the economy, that is smart, that's discreet, that's attainable, and that's going to put Americans back to work, people buy into that, and they're excited about it. And so we're growing all over the country, especially here in Utah.
We've seen something very similar, I think, in the immigration discussion that went on in our state, particularly during our last legislative session. People were quick to kind of put 2 and 2 together and get 22 and say there are 100,000 plus Utahns out of work, and there are 100,000 plus estimated undocumented workers. Ergo, that's why those Utahns are out of work. That's not the case as you dig just a couple of levels deeper. Do you find it's interesting how people make that connection, that assumption incorrectly?
I think it's a great question, and if you think about what immigration opponents have done well, is that they have sold the country very strongly on the notion that immigration is a zero-sum game, that our labor market is a zero-sum game, and that every foreign worker that takes a job is an American that can't get one. And it's a very discernible, it's a very easy to grasp concept. It's just unfortunately wrong. That the labor market is flexible, and that in the global economy, companies that get the workers they need, they're going to grow, and those that don't are going to shrink. And that if you get the right workers, there are big gaps in our economy, both the high-skilled and the low-skilled end. We Americans, and we need to train more Americans, convince more Americans to be engineers, scientists, mathematicians, actuaries, accountants, but until we do that, we have these gaps at the high-skilled end. And at the low-skilled end, we're more educated than ever, that people aren't willing to work, or either mobility or education, they don't want to work in farms, in restaurants, landscaping. There are these gaps, and when you fill these gaps with the right workers, people grow. When you get someone on the farm, then you can have a supplier. When you can staff the resort, you can have more tourist dollars. You have managers. You have shipping jobs in Oakland, the Port of Oakland. 40% of what they export are farm products.
The default opinion also seems to go to low-skilled workers. That's the image that comes to mind for many Americans when you talk about needing an immigrant workforce. You talk about needing more Americans to be scientists and engineers. While we have a certain number that we need to fill those jobs, but we don't have the supply to fill it, we need to bring in those types of skilled workers. So immigration is it's a broad gate that we need. We need to bring in more workers to help us grow in a number of areas.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. And when we tell the story, that is a complex story, and that it's not just people coming from Mexico to work low-skilled jobs or people coming from China and India to be programmers. That it's all over the economy. The story is Lewiston, Maine, where Somali immigrants came in and revitalized a town. I mean, this story, we have members from Vicksburg, Mississippi, and North Little Rock, Arkansas. We have lots of members here because the story is different everywhere you go, and it's at the high-skilled and it's the low-skilled. And that immigrants are very positive and always have been on our country. And we don't want the takeaway to be that every immigrant is going to create a job. That's just not true. But we want the takeaway to be that if we are smarter about immigration policy, smarter about who we let in and who we don't, we can grow our economies and we can put more Americans back to work. And that's how we want to think about the debate, and that's what we want to tell Washington, and that's how we want people talking about in the communities around the country.
You mentioned telling Washington. In Utah, we've been doing that very actively. The Chamber planning a trip of business leaders to go back and meet with policymakers in the nation's capital to talk about a federal immigration reform effort. Our Attorney General has been very active in this. How loud does the voice have to be before we'll actually see some movement at the federal level? And does it have to be timed just perfectly with an election cycle to get anything done?
It's a great question, and I think it's not so much the volume, although the volume is extremely important, and the more people speaking will drive reform faster. It's also about what the voice you're selling is. If you talk about the reform efforts that didn't succeed in 2006, 2007, a lot of that had to be that it was an all-or-nothing effort that focused on a lot of areas where people don't necessarily agree. But there are huge areas in immigration reform where most of this country agrees. Most of this country agrees we've got to take control of who comes here and who doesn't. Most of the country agrees that our immigration system is broken. And most of the country agrees that all the country agrees that our legislators should be doing everything they can to put more Americans back to work. And if you focus on those areas and you focus on discrete things that'll put more Americans back to work, that'll drive support, that'll make people think of immigration as an economic issue. It'll change the debate, and it'll make the broader reforms that are in the Utah Compact that we believe in too more likely down the road.
People want more information about your efforts. Where can they go to find it on the web?
Our website is www.renewouraconomy.org. And we're the Partnership for New American Economy. We're in Google, and we're very active. So if you're a mayor or a business leader and you want to speak out, there's no financial or time commitment to join. And we are happy to help our members in every way possible. We help draft op-eds, we help with talking points, we bring people to Washington, we plan events. We want to change the narrative in the country, and we want to bring as broad a tent as we can.
Jeremy Robbins is with the Partnership for New American Economy. Jeremy, thanks for your time.
My pleasure.